Hi, Conference Report. Thanks for using the tool. I'm going to respond going through my notes, and then I'm going to go through your questions. So kind of a two-pass approach. Hopefully the video won't be too long, but I want to answer all of your questions. Now, sort of a background is I have a lot of technology, and making this tool was largely a matter of backing off from a lot of the technology and a lot of the more sophisticated things I've done. Back when I had the annotation tool, which is still running, I was using Google App Engine, which is I was always concerned with since it's proprietary to Google, even though they let people use it for free. And they changed the pricing model of their server and stuff. And so a couple years ago, I started working on a more open source, a more open standard based system, and I now use a Rackspace cloud server, for example, to do the server part of the job. For example, having the database instance that saves information about the replies and about videos that have been discovered and things like this in a NoSQL Mongo database. And please forgive me, some of this will be technical. Probably, so I'll leave it up to the users to sort out what they can understand, just so I can give a complete answer. So as a result, some of the things that you're asking for are trivially easy to do. Like, I could have put an X on the replies so that people could delete them. But I'd rather start off the problem of getting spammed and having replies that shouldn't be in there than somebody that wants to go vandalize the tool, deleting responses that should be in there. So starting on my notes, for example, you talked about, well, what if somebody adds the same response to a video twice? Right now that will only insert one entry in the database, so people will only see that response once. On the other hand, it's also not doing what I plan to do in the long run, which is record those multiple responses and possibly use that to help indicate organic behavior by the community. I mean, if 5 people have added the same response, that's 5 strong votes that really is a good response. And another general thing, which I'll get into when we describe how the subscription system I had worked on, the Google App Engine based software, how that worked. I believe in affinity networks. So, in that system, there was a person could create a group and other people could subscribe to that group, and but if there's certain people in the group that they didn't want to see their videos, they could modify the group themselves, and they would be modifying their own view of the group. And then you have affinity networks where if a friend of yours has modified the group, you can choose to adopt their modification, or you can stick with the group owner and whoever they have put in the group, and a new person to the group would see what the group owner had specified. And we would do this all with affinity networks, so that you could both subscribe to individuals, or you could subscribe to groups and get the subscriptions that group had defined for it. Why you so emotionally needy today, Tat? Okay, it's just distracting to have a cat. All right, I get it. All right, you asked about if the person viewing the video is the owner of that video, can we give them, special abilities? Like maybe that's the person that could delete spam responses. Again, I think the question really is that the person? Is that how we want to do it? So what are the features that person would get? But the answer is yes. There's some difficulties there. I mean, the information is embedded in the YouTube page of who's logged in. I can compare that to who has made the video, which the tool knows, and then give them special features based on that. However, again, it's not clear to me what kind of special abilities that person necessarily should have. So that's sort of the deeper question. And I think the clean way to go through that is to have people log into the tool and have accounts in the system, in the ResponseDB, be associated with the ability, be able to adopt accounts at Vimeo, adopt accounts at YouTube, adopt blogs where they're accepted as the owner of that blog. And again, there's some issues there technically with, you know, how would people verify that ownership. But the bigger issue is how do we have our community moderation be organic and work well, without a lot of people that just have to run around and do that. We would like it to be natural from the users of the system, that it's moderated. And if some people make judgment calls like this guy's a bozo and somebody else think no, he's not a bozo, you know, if the ideal solution is that I, as the user, can ultimately decide if I think that person should be included in the list of, you know, artists or not, or the list of antinatalists or not. So it's kind of a cloud, a shared cloud of subscriptions, where somebody might create a list of antinatalists and you could say, well, I don't want those three, I don't want to see the videos of those three people, so I'm not going to consider them in the group of antinatalists I'm following. And in the database, what you have is a fuzzy group, right? Each entry in the group is a separate database. And then what you see the group as depends on the query that you're making to the database, right? Like, I want all the people that the owner says are in the group. I want all the people that everybody in the group says is in the group. I want everybody that's in the group according to my friends, and using affinity networks and the like. Restricting, you asked about restricting who can make responses. That's in the trivially easy area in technologically, but in terms of who should be able to do that. For example, I think you mentioned the idea that only the person that owns the video could make those responses, or, you know, approve those responses, or only respond to their self. All technically easy to do, but I don't think that just the video owner should be able to say who the response is, right? Because I don't think they choose, people don't choose the strongest counter argument. Quite the opposite. Sometimes those people infuriate them and they want to block responses from that person. So, and that's not what this is about. To me, the larger picture of these dialogue tools, one of the things it allows is for people to make reasonable responses, and viewers and the community to review that and decide for themselves how useful that was. So the person that has made this link, the response, their name is, well, I'm not forcing people to log in now, but in principle their name is in the database associated with that particular response. And so this will allow these kind of affinity things. So, like, you know, user Fubad, I could have a filter that says, well, I don't want to see the responses that he's made, right? So this is a tool for anti-spam, in that we can identify people that have spammed it, and then their videos will go away, their responses will go away in all of the videos, and yet they'll still be in the database. So somehow that was done in error or as a biased judgment call, it's still available in the database. Somebody that wants to see those responses still could. Now with deleting, I intentionally have left the deletion off. It was hard to do. It took some restraint, because as a developer I'm adding things and wanting to delete them. Of course I can delete them directly in the database. It's kind of a pain to delete one particular one at the moment. It's easy to delete all of them, and it's not really that hard to delete one. It just wouldn't be, you know, a very time efficient way to do deletions. So I just left that off, because I figured if people are going to test this, I'd rather see a bunch of responses that are inappropriate or even spammed than, you know, by somebody playing with the tool or vandalizing in the tool, than I would like somebody to vandalize the tool by deleting responses as they're made, as we're trying to create the database. And for testing purposes, this is fine, because for testing purposes, it doesn't really matter if a video is, you know, appropriately is an appropriate reply or not, right? You can see how the technology is working. And so I figured this is something that hopefully we'd get a small community of testers, and then we would see what the pressure is for what kind of features, you know, and how that community can viably, police the amount of vandalism that occurs and things like this. In other words, I'd rather solve a problem that presents itself rather than anticipate too many of them. Technologically, I've anticipated them. I have a huge body of code for doing this kind of stuff we're doing now at this point, and so I'm prepared to not be starting from scratch on any of the solutions. We have authentication systems and so on and so forth. But I would rather be presented with the actual problem, and that way we can be open, because I think maybe we can be creative. I don't see that we need to copy, how Facebook or Gmail or YouTube or any of these systems work. I see, I think there's some can, what is your problem? Cats. Anyway, right now, yes, a video can be set as a response to as many uh, videos as you like to set it to. And that's very easy to limit. It's technically very simple. Again, there's the social structure. There's the organic community question of why should they be limited to 5 as opposed to 10. I'll tell you one thing, I don't like the YouTube idea that they used to have, where a video could be a reply to only one other video. There's something to that, because maybe I made a video specifically, literally, as a reply, and so there's this one-to-one nature. But what if somebody is arguing for, she loves me so much that she has to sink her claws into my leg? Yes, Ellie, you love me greatly. Um, But what if somebody is arguing, say, for the existence of a God based on Pascal's wager? I would like to just choose a video from the FAQ and say, here's my answer to Pascal's wager. I don't really want to be limited in that. So I think we have the complicated thing there is not technically, it's what the social solution is. What is the organic way to uh, to prohibit spam? I suppose what I'm thinking about in terms of spam is that we turn on that you have to see the responses other people have added. You just need the extension. But to add responses, you have to be logged in, and then maybe you get the deletion feature. And then when you delete, maybe it goes out in a notification to other users so they can confirm or deny, or maybe it goes in automatically, but it's just a mark on that response, and the response is still in the database, so it can then be recovered. I mean, those are the questions, how that works. Those are the questions that I would like answered, and then the technology to implement how we think that should work among a group of people as a social question. The technology is ready and awaiting to implement that. Um, Recognizing videos from other sites. Well, the first tool, because I started over pretty much from scratch, and the first tool where I was getting responses from reading the comments, it actually supports links from Vimeo and stuff. They show up just as links, but it does know it's a video site. It does know that it's Vimeo. Um, and I turned all that off so that right now it only recognizes watch links in there. And the issue there is uh, it, to make this work, to integrate Vimeo into this so that you could respond back and forth and everything. Right now, just as I have for YouTube, would require me going to the Vimeo watch page, finding a place to insert my box, and I could insert it. Then when you want to make a reply, there's this issue of when you paste something in, it goes to YouTube because YouTube has an API, and it can get the thumbnail, the title, the number of comments, and things like that. We need to use that API for Vimeo as well. You can kludge it, right? If the Vimeo doesn't have an API, you can go as the user and read get the human readable web page and sort of screen scrape the information you need. That's how Gary does his tools. And you may or may not be able to find a thumbnail. You may, or when the web pages change, that system will be broken. So you're limited a little bit on what will Vimeo serve you a thumbnail for a video, but those are really just questions of the graphical niceness. I that box is ready to allow responding to a video with any web page whatsoever, right? And the degree to which it just shows you a link, um, versus gets things like thumbnails and video titles and stuff. It all depends on the particular website. One, does it have an API? And two, have we taken the time to adapt that API into the given object model? But the object model is designed for that. The technology is not designed for YouTube, though I have software that uses the YouTube API, so I know how to get that kind of information from YouTube now, and I have to develop it for another website. But it wouldn't take, it'd take on the order of days or weeks to add a website, a video site that does provide that kind of information through an API. And in the last version of the tool I made, I was only getting the fancy information for YouTube responses, but I allowed responding with Vimeo, Clipbucket. There might have been a Do Not God one in there, um, and websites in general, right? Um, so, I'm looking forward to doing that. But again, with the first version of this tool, I think I was doing too much of that and throwing in too much of that kind of stuff. And I'd like to unroll that more slowly but surely, right? Um, Now, you were talking about the social layer, and having an aggregator that, instead of being a website like Facebook, at least this is how I interpreted it, a website like Facebook, that it's done in the browser. I think Google is going towards this, and I think that we might be in a place where there's going to be another battle in the browser, and the battle is going to be in these JavaScript kind of extensions and apps that the browsers could have. Because, look at Facebook. It's got its own photos, it's got its own email, it's got its own, videos, it's got all of its own version of everything that the web really provides. Now, why should I have to use Facebook's photos to have my online photos just to be integrated with my social media? I say this as someone that's not that keen on using social media. Uh, But why should I have to use their version? Why can't I use Flickr or Bitbucket or whatever I want for my videos? And I like to blog on WordPress. No, I'm going to use Blogger. Why should it all have to be the Facebook version? It smacks of the not invented here syndrome, where they reinvent everything. And why? Because they have a better solution? No, it's so that they can integrate it and control everything. And so, with an extension right now, you can aggregate everything for the user at the user site, and you can still share that. You can make a home page out of that and share it with other people. But when the other people loaded it, they would get information about the layout. But when it comes times to get the tweets, they don't have to, the server doesn't have to be going and getting the tweets and then sending them to the user. The user goes straight to Twitter based on the layout information, and I go and I'm seeing your homepage. And instead of the server sending me the tweets, the server in common just sends me information about what your Twitter name is, and then my browser goes to Twitter and gets those tweets directly. And this shares the CPU and processing, the CPU processing the bandwidth rather, and it also puts control back in the hands of the user with the data and controlling events going on in the user. So you discover things based on user behavior, and it's just like right now with this tool. When you have responses, there's just a little information about the response. It actually goes to YouTube to get that thumbnail fresh every time you reload the page. And that way everything's up to date. If the person changes the thumbnail, if the person, if there's more comments now, all of that stuff is kept up to date, and it's your browser that is making that request, right? Whereas on my old video annotation tool, it was the server that you're logged into that had to go to YouTube. And so similarly, that server would be throttled and YouTube could try to charge more information. Whereas when the users go, they're not going to, 1,000 users has 1,000 people going straight to YouTube as themselves, 1,000 users in the video annotation tool, and suddenly my server is going to YouTube 1,000 times more often. Is going to get throttled, and it's a bottleneck. Okay, it's a bottleneck both just in a processing design sense, and it's also a choke point where a commercial company is in control of your progress, right? Of your scaling. So I really think this is a big picture, and it goes on to some other things I'm working on, but it's really even a separate tool. But that web page that's my project web page for this thing is made out of a bunch of technology that some of which I'm using in the responder tool, but which is more oriented on a different way of aggregating and developing these web applications. So, already talked about supporting Vimeo. You mentioned about, well, don't try to find a place to insert the responder box in the Vimeo. Just do it in your pop down. These extensions can also create their own web pages, full-on web pages. You can always embed things with iframes there. So there's a lot of flexibility. Again, I think it's the question of what is most useful for the community and helping the community operate in an organic way, especially when it comes to moderating what is or isn't in the system. What is or isn't presented to people by default, what is or isn't presentable by people manipulating their own filters. It's really not that hard to put this box in a Vimeo page. And I think it would take a couple days probably to support Vimeo in some manner. But I vaguely remember that Vimeo is not real friendly with their API. And so, yeah, getting the showing the thumbnails and stuff might not be possible, but you could have the title and the web link, right? So again, with the login system, I have a login system right now, and if people can sign up at that page, the project page, there's a login. If you open login and you don't have a login, there's a sign up page. It probably would confuse people at the moment because you'll get forwarded to an old server, an old URL, an old domain. It goes to the same server, but you end up being at this photogami.org domain. But you will successfully get a username and password, and it fully supports groups and filtering. And so finally, in subscriptions, I just want to describe what I had done with subscriptions over at the video annotation tool. And this is where I realized I didn't want to go any further with Google, because while I was doing this, they changed the way they charge for Google App Engine. So I just saw there was no reason to go forward. But I did like the way the subscription model worked. Basically, a person could create a group, and then they have privileges as the group owner. So Gary could create a group, or Forever Will Films could create a group and add everybody in it she thinks is an antinatalist. Then when I, as a new user, go and I say, oh, what are antinatalists, I would get all the people in that group listed from top to bottom, with the videos they've made. Across to the side at the top would be whoever had made the most recent video, and so on, ordered by whoever had been most active. But then you have a big grid of users and videos. But I could also say, are you kidding me? Fede, he's not or Fede is not an antinatalist, and I could remove him from the group. Everybody else would still be seeing him, but then I would stop seeing him and he wouldn't show up in that subscription thing. So this is the kind of system I was talking about, where you can have an idea of a group that people can modify for themselves, and then through affinity networks, I could also say, well, look, I don't want any users in groups that have been deleted by people that are in my affinity network, my friends, right? So then you're my friend, and so you have that setting. So when you go to that group, the first version of the group you see isn't what Forever Wolf Films put in. It's what Forever Wolf Films put in, minus the things that I have prohibited. I said, no, I don't, this person isn't really in the group. You have said, use my advice for my friends, so you wouldn't see that person. However, meanwhile, Forever Wolf Films has added 3 more people, and you would see them. Right. So that's the kind of system I would like to see for subscriptions. And in terms of this tool, how that would basically work is, if you go up to the pop-up of the tool, there'll be links in there, for example, to subscriptions, where the extension will create the whole web page. It'll not really be a web page, it's right there on your machine, but it'll create that and can show you your subscriptions. And what I really like about this is that person then is going to be discovering information about their subscriptions by, in their browser, software in their browser, namely the extension, going to YouTube and collecting that data. Right? So it's like it's very distributed. And then some of that data, when they want, is shared with other people. Right? It's discovered by the people, and it's in their hands, and then we have to have the correct buttons and tools so that they can publish it to this Rackspace cloud or whatever server it's pointed at, and share the information. And it's very distributed. The whole network of people across the world is going to websites from all their different locations using their own CPU and bandwidth, and then the amount of CPU and bandwidth the server has to spend is greatly reduced, and it scales really well, and so it doesn't have ballooning costs, for example, in the server infrastructure. I don't know how many people using this tool before my website would become swamped, but I imagine it would be thousands and thousands of people. Of course, that might change as we do more and more sophisticated things, but the basic model is most of the sophistication is in the software that's under the user's control in their browser, in the form of a browser extension or browser app. All right, so I think I went through my notes and your questions, but I'll go through the 10 questions and just reiterate. So this is part 2, and I'll have a link into here, fast forward link. Question 1, response box feature works well. Minor cosmetic changes might be necessary but not important. Absolutely not. It has to look exact. No. Yeah, of course. I can see things that I would change, but hopefully you're not talking about that pink text, because I like me some pink text. I overcame, American men we're trained to be anti-pink, and I overcame that. I intend to use that. No, yeah, that's the thing. This is an area where, I care about cosmetics as much as the next person, but when I'm engineering, I really just want to know if the bridge can support the vehicles that are supposed to travel across it, what color it's painted and stuff. I would really like to have a community deciding that, and I'm the sort of person that I've been in this situation professionally. I'd rather just have a consensus. I'm not here to push particular cosmetics. I would like if people use the GitHub issue tracking system, and then I can go in there and review and prioritize things. Notification system to alert users that a response has been made to their video. Yeah, that could be done very easily. It relates to this issue of discovering who's logged into YouTube. I want to find out the proper way to do that. But for example, if you take my system where people do log in to use the tool, this might be one reason that you would want to log in and have an account at the discourse.technology URL, so that it could automatically notify you of that. My intention is if you look in the pop-up window, you'll see ResponseDB links, and they don't really do anything, but if you click, for example, the Robot HQ link, you'll see it gets to a web page. That web page is where I'm planning to put things like you know, your subscriptions, people have responded to you, and that kind of information. There is a filter to catch the same video being posted as a response multiple times to the same video, and it's expressly allowed that it can be posted as a response to multiple targets. Um, I actually have a shitload of sophisticated tagging, user group, affinity group kind of features that I just want to have in mind some model for how the organic structure of this. That's right, I want to design an organic structure. Don't oxymoron me on this. Um, and then do that in a focused way. I have all the tools needed to do this however we decide, basically. You ask, can the response box recognize the owner of the page? Yeah, that can be done. I need to look into the proper way, and I'll probably will look into if YouTube API gives me a way to do this. I already this morning a little bit looked into the information that's on the page, which of course the content script has access to, and you could figure out, it's a little kludgy if YouTube changes the structure of their page, but you can find out who is the user, if assuming they're logged in, and you could compare that with the name of the associated with the video itself that I get from going to the YouTube API. And so I could probably do this quick and dirty right now, but I want to look for a proper way to do it that isn't going to break, because you know, this is the thing about a lot of people just throw stuff together, but my video code tool I haven't touched in I think a couple years now. It still works, you know. The and YouTube has changed in that time, but they changed according to a structure where, you know, those APIs are still working. It uses version 2, which will stop working, I guess, in about a year when they complete the deprecation of version 2. But you know, or similarly, that web page I set up, all that code still works, and it's resistant to bit rot this way, and it's so I'd rather do it a proper way. I don't like just to get it working in some way that's just narrowly balanced, right? Easily toppled. Um, Accepting URLs from other video sharing sites, yeah, and I want to accept them from blogs and things like this, and I was already doing that in the last version, but it posed a level of complexity where I realized, look, I'd rather people want to add a particular site and there be a call for that and then do it, rather than add 15 different sites, try to debug all of that, and you know, and not need it, and create confusion in the process. So a big part of this version of the tool was just going back to a focused point and leaving things out rather than shoving them in, which can take some restraint, because I have technology to do all this kind of stuff. And you know, I decided it'd be better to wait. You know, I've decided I'd rather have the problem of video responses that need to be deleted and then add the feature that lets the community of testers or whomever is using it so far do that deletion, rather than give a way to delete up front and expect a community to form and learn that system. I'd rather there be a demand. So I'm prepared with technology, I think, to satisfy almost any conceivable demand, at least in the kind of tool space that I'm thinking of. You ask, can a responder decide to remove their response? Not at the moment, but we could do that. I'm not sure if you know, but I have a big bias about people that remove their videos and stuff, and I kind of feel like there's an amount of commitment. So there's examples where somebody should be able to remove a response, but they could take down the video. But again, trivially easy to allow that. But one, when you say the responder, we'd want to have people logging in and turn on the login system, which I do have. And I'm going to work a little bit on that today, making that ready to turn on. Again, I'm more concerned about what is the organic, you know, the way of being of this community. What's the vibe of this community? How should we best do this? These questions of community moderation. I've seen, a half a dozen decent approaches to it, all with their drawbacks. And as I had mentioned to you in a message PM, I'm very impressed that Wikipedia can deal with their vandalism when they let people edit pages without even a Wikipedia account. So how do they do that? I would like something as organic to that. Now, there is a kind of a known principle that the reason they can do that in Wikipedia is they've made it so that it takes longer to do the vandalism than it takes to revert. So maybe we need a system of reversion, not just being able to delete videos, but once you see there was a bunch of vandalism, if you could say, here's the vandal, go clean them up, or, revert this video, if somebody added 70 spams, and you might be able to say, well, revert this video to how it was before this response, and they all go away once. Some way, I mean, the Wikipedia principle is that the reason they have so little vandalism, considering what a huge target and everything that they are, and the potential benefits actually, is because it takes much less time to revert vandalism than it does to create it. Okay, so I would love to find some organic way where the community of responsible people can keep ahead of the vandals that spend 6 hours some night. I want that to take 5. Some vandals spend 6 hours going around to videos and spamming them with bullshit. That's okay if it only takes 5 minutes to clean up. So and it's nice to think that you might have software that can detect that, but pretty much I think the general principle here is that the software can make it take 5 minutes instead of 10 hours, but you generally need a human involved, right? Because your vandal will probably be able to outsmart the computer. He'll just play against the computer until he finds the computer's weak spot. So multiple responses by the same user. I forget what that question is, but I probably touched on it. Login is necessary to prevent abuse. Not sure about that. Some people will have to log in. And I thought, for example, how about this? Maybe people that get login accounts can do deletions. Just trust them. Maybe people should have to pay $12 a year to be a registered user, and then they're in the response union, and they're given certain privileges, and their names are in there, and there can be community policing, and if somebody abuses that, like the Wikipedia admins, there's a way to catch up with them. So I think login is definitely necessary for this system. At the moment, I'm not exactly sure how to use the login. But for what it's worth, I have a login system, and I also have a privilege system so that users can be in groups, and groups have privileges, and I just turned that off for this case. It would have been easier to have the login, but I thought, well, why should people have to log in just to test? And then I started thinking about Wikipedia and stuff, and I'm like, maybe there's a way to allow people that aren't logged in, but mind you, they've installed the plugin to just interact with the tool. And the other thing is, I can automatically create a login for your IP address, where your name is your IP address, and and it's like you're logged in. I mean, your IP could be blocked or detected as creating spam. If you have a response that's tagged as spam, it could go through and see what other responses you made, even though there's no login. So I'm just trying to be creative on that. But yeah, as I said, it took a little work to turn the logins off. I have a fully featured login system. Now, one thing I don't do at the moment is support OpenAuth or signing in with Google. But I'd be willing to support OpenAuth, and I did some of that. I did support it when I had the Google App Engine based software. So you know, that's a few day project of getting up to speed and how to do that. So um, there's a lot of issues there that have to do with you know, this what's the structure of your community kind of thing. Um, you bring up an interesting thing for subscribe to all responses, and it's basically, yeah, you can unsubscribe some trolls. Basically every response is its own little record in the database, right? And so associated with it is, you know, who created it, the time of day, etc. And it's in a MongoDB, a very full powered, totally scalable. We could have millions of users using this the database. It can be distributed and sliced. It's a great system. um, and So it's possible to filter based on anything. I mean, you can have a blacklist of people whose responses you don't want to see. You can have a whitelist where you only see the responses of people you pre-approved. Meanwhile, the database itself is unaffected. All the responses are in there, and it can be filtered for you. Uh, and again, that's the kind of thing that requires login, so I know who you are, right? The IP thing was just an idea, and it's pretty good, but of course you can have IPs get reassigned and stuff like this. So there's holes in that system. So okay, hopefully I answered your questions a little bit. Cheers.